Hello and good evening, everyone. I'm back with the one and only Thunderous One, all the way from the UK, and we're going to do a little update on the state of the Union. How are you doing, Thunderous?
Hi everybody. Hi Lloyd. Hi to everybody in the chat. I'm fine and in good health, and I hope you guys are too. How are you, Lloyd?
I'm pretty good, thanks. Yeah, busy but well. Yeah, it's been. I just got back from a across the country drive visiting family down south, and yeah, things are good. Things are very very well. So yeah, we've got some interesting articles to look at today. I'm, the UK. I mean, I think we all look at it in horror and like, what is going on there?
I think when I don't know if this is something that I don't know what you've got planned or in what order, but if I had to summarize the state of affairs as it is at the moment, given this week, which I think is quite interesting when you consider it's Day of Remembrance for veterans, and one veteran in the United Kingdom was interviewed earlier on this week. So this is a guy that has seen his comrades fall,
Yeah,
buried friends, and he was interviewed as to his opinion. And his comment was that given the state of the country now, this is basically, I paraphrase, but it's not what he fought for. He doesn't recognize the country.
yes,
And he was met with a presenter that was very antagonistic, as though to try and get him to say something that would incriminate him. Or the female presenter I found was very rude in a patronizing, condescending manner. But if we put that to the side, because this is pretty much what we expect in the United Kingdom from mainstream media, it was just listening to the veterans say, in effect, this isn't what we fought for. And it's interesting that there would have been many, if you like, gatherings today of veterans in certain locations of the country, which would be in the vicinity of, say, hotels that are accommodating this invasion, if you want to, for want of a better word, but over maybe near, over by, say, in certain ports, where as they're commemorating the war and their fallen comrades, at the same port, there'll probably be boats coming in, bringing in more people to be a part, to basically be accommodated in opulence in comparison to where they've come from, and certainly a lot more opulence than, say, war veterans in this country, which I think I learned this week, or was reminded this week, was a part of the Labour government's manifesto that they were going to house all veterans. How's that going?
they're not. They will house uneducated, illiterate, rapey migrants from who knows where, from who knows what backgrounds, that may be evading the law in their own countries, but they won't look after the veterans. And this is what you were referring to. This is a 100-year-old veteran who said, here, let me just move that. So hello, everyone. Welcome back. And hello, Janice. The UK is fine if it wasn't for our government. Let me just see here. Yep. Oops, and it says nobody voted for multiculturalism. He says the D-Day veteran says state of the UK makes the sacrifice unworthy. So he says that their sacrifice was made unworthy. So that's him over there. So he's unhappy. Yeah, I mean, this is the state of the UK.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if he's just raising a thought or opinion or a concern for the state of the country now, which I think is echoed by a majority of the people in the country. The thing is, though, that if you look at the attitude of the presenters of the show, the program or the interview, their response was indicative of the mainstream media's attitude as well as the government's attitude towards people, not just him, but people who share in his opinion or have a solidarity with this guy's opinion.
Yeah. And he says also that Britain is now worse than during wartime, which is, yeah. I mean, this, I spoke recently to someone I met who works for the EU government, and he says privately, people will say that they are unhappy with the way things are. They don't like Islam. They don't like multiculturalism. They don't like the immigration. These people are dangerous. They feel unsafe. But he says they will never say it publicly. And of course, he says that the EU is infected with Muslims and communists.
I think, to be honest, that's reminiscent of what for anybody that's studied in intelligent design, they'll say the same thing that happens in the scientific world, where they know that either Darwinism, neo-Darwinism, punctuated equilibrium, or chaos theory all have serious problems with reconciling life in the universe and the origin of the universe, but they won't say it for fear of being ostracized in the scientific community. It's the same thing, because you don't need much intelligence or evidence to see the impact of the secular countries that we have that have been systematically had their objective moral values eroded, and having a vacuum created, which is now being the void being filled with this blasphemous ideology, this toxic ideology, this corrosive ideology that creates mayhem, friction, and schism, no matter where it is manifest.
Right.
You'd have to be stupidly perverse or hopelessly ignorant to not accept that fact.
Right. And Erkin makes a good point. The USA is not okay either. Zahran Mamdani is the first Muslim metropolitan mayor of the USA. And maybe that's a good thing once people see the disaster that unfolds, and then perhaps people will realize they don't want that. And look, I think you can also only push people so far. The US has a lot of guns, and the UK, you're starting to see a rise in populism, and it's seeing a rise in anti-immigrant sentiment. It's also seeing a rise in patriotism. And this may not be, I speak to people, and also the person I spoke to at the EU, this diplomat, he said, what do you think is going to happen in the next few years, the next 5 years? What will happen because of all of this? And I said, there will be internal strife, civil war. And he says, this is the opinion of everyone he speaks to in councils at the EU. He says, this is going to go that way. Violence, everyone is speaking about it almost openly. So these people may well be prepared for it, but ultimately they don't have the numbers to sustain it, because I think people will find it back when people are fighting for their homelands, and they're fighting with their back to the wall. They've got nothing to lose. So I think that they are overestimating their ability, these foreign invaders. And the governments, I mean, they're guilty of treason. So, yeah, but we shall see. I mean, unfortunately, it's probably going to get worse before it gets worse. So,
the thing is, you've just mentioned there about the United States having guns. I've noticed now, as you know, and because we've spoken privately before, my family have a martial arts school. My brother is a sensei, and so what he's noticed is a lot more people are wanting to get involved in self-defense. What I've noticed as well is on YouTube is that there are a lot more now, if you like, people being vocal, because the attack that we had in this country, was it about 10 days ago now, on the train where 10 people were stabbed. Okay, the comment that was raised for discussion in the media was about weapons for self-defense. And in this country now, as it still stands, and I wasn't aware of this, but even pepper spray is still illegal. One of the arguments is that pepper spray could be used also by the nefarious villain, if you want, in their attack. And I'm thinking, well, they're already using knives. That was a stupid comment to make. If you think pepper spray you've got a better chance of surviving an attack if you've got something, you've got no chance of surviving an attack if you've got nothing. But what I've noticed is a lot of martial arts schools now and self-defense experts, of which you're an expert, Lloyd, are now giving hints and tips almost about what weapons you can't carry in the United Kingdom as far as defense is concerned, but using a dialogue to give hints and tips as to what you could carry legally, which could be used as a method of warding off an attack. So this is increasing as well now. So even though we can't have weapons in the United Kingdom, martial arts instructors and self-defense instructors are now being a little bit more aware. Once upon a time, they would have said, if you see a knife, run. If you see a gun, stand and fight. Now I'm finding that the majority of them are saying, Obviously, if you see a gun, that's still going to be fights because you've got no chance of outrunning a bullet. But once upon a time, where they used to say, run for the knife, they're now not saying that because that can cause you more problems, one of them being stabbed in the back. Now the attitude is you stand a better chance of maybe using something like a belt or some keys or something like that. They've mentioned other things as well. And that you stand a better chance of maybe surprising your attacker or confusing your attacker, or maybe giving your attacker a moment for a pause of thought, which gives you a better chance of evaluating the situation and reacting to it.
Right. No, there are things you can use, like these leather coin pockets. If you fill them with a lot of heavy coins, they can be very effective. They can break things and knock people out. So maybe you want to get a nice new leather coin pocket. I'll use that phrase. It's a little leather. You have a little zip. You pop in your coins and you hold it. It holds your coins and you can swing it as well. So yeah, there are things of that type. No, I get you. No, so this is yeah, definitely. So I'll tell you what, let's jump into this. Guys, Christmas season is coming up. As you probably are aware, already in Europe, in Germany, for instance, certain Christmas markets are being cancelled because they're afraid that Buddhists may do something violent. It's Buddhists, right, Thunderous, that they're closing.
Yeah, it's Buddhist because they're known for self-immolation or driving cars into places where people are happily celebrating Christmas and buying presents for the family. Buddhists, Hindus and Sikhs are prone to that kind of activity too.
Yeah. People really hate Hindus and Sikhs for driving trucks through Christmas markets. So, guys, I want you to have a look here. These are the 5 pillars of Islam. When people start talking about the religion of yellow peace, show them this. When they start, just seriously, it is. I do notice on social media certain changes. I do notice that Muslims are starting to they're starting to act aggrieved. They're starting to act like the victim. Oh my God, look at the Islamophobia. People are saying they want Muslims out of the country. They want Islam banned. Oh my gosh, they're not, will somebody think of the Muslims? Clearly, they are seeing a shift. And unfortunately, you have to make a choice now because Islam is antithetical to everything you believe and hold dear. But understand, so just grab a copy of this. These are the 5 pillars of Islam. And if I were you, you need far more Islamophobia in your life, in your community, and in your country, because that's going to help a great deal.
I think the thing is, though, Islamophobia or the Muslims' trump card of crying out of Islamophobia is now beginning to wear thin. I think when you look at comments of people, I think the common phrase now or buzz phrase is fatigued. Okay, with a lot of things. So people are fatigued with being called racist. People are fatigued with being called bigots. They're fatigued with being called far right. I think Islamophobia now is just another fatigue that people are fed off. People are beginning to see through it. They're not accepting it anymore now. I think the information as far as Islam is concerned via the internet, via the material people such as yourself have put out, Lloyd, and I think in your instance, probably more important, and we'll maybe come on to that in a moment, is now being read by a lot of people, and or listened to by a lot of people. People have access to the information, and they're using that. If they're not using it in their daily life because they're not exposed to Islam as much as maybe another person is in, say, Birmingham, Luton, and Bradford and places, they are certainly not putting up with it with what they see in the media when people say Islam is a religion of peace, or when they see that people of that kind of demographic are getting into politics and they're having a negative comment to say about why are these people in politics influencing, when we know that the influence would be more for their own community rather than the less of the community that elected them into office in the first place.
We're seeing this, and this is, well, there will be a backlash at some point. So that's coming. So let's dive into some of there's a whole list here, as you can see, of the articles. Harry Connolly death, GP Dr. Abu Tambi given a warning. So you may be aware Lucy Connolly was sentenced to something like 32 months in prison for a tweet that this was with the Southport killings when a Welsh choir boy unfortunately took a knife and attacked a little dance class where a lot of little girls were. He stabbed a number of people. He murdered 3 of them. He stabbed one of the little girls 120 times. He even tried to saw her head off. So he sat there sawing her head off, which clearly is not just something that you do once off. It's not just a little casual event. He set about mutilating her body. I mean, this girl was what, 4 years old? So now Lucy Connolly put out a tweet, which she then deleted within 3 hours, I believe, 4 hours. And she was sent to prison for that for over 9 months. She came out. And of course, there have been rapists and murderers who are foreigners in the UK who've been given suspended sentences for their crimes, whereas she just put out a tweet that was only up for a few hours. Now, her son had been treated very poorly by a foreign GP and died. So she was a child carer. Her own son had been killed by direct negligence by an immigrant. Do you want to tell us a bit more about this, Thunderous?
Well, yeah, he's based in a town that I'm local to. I know the town, Northampton. It's a few miles away from me. And it's he works in the Kingsthorpe Medical Centre. And now, if anybody wants to, they can go on to Google reviews of Kingsthorpe Medical Centre, Northampton, and just read some of the comments that people have left, their own patients, as it were, and visitors to that surgery, not just of the receptionists, which apparently have a very bad attitude, but also not many people speak too highly of this doctor. And this doctor has actually been called into question over other instances since. But the interesting thing with this is, as you've mentioned, so Lucy Connolly has already lost a child to ignorance of 4 doctors. He was merely the 4th doctor in the situation. So if you look at all, because I sent you all the links, it shows you the history, and this was the 4th doctor. So already Lucy Connolly has, if you like, an emotional attachment to the influence. And now add this as well, many doctors coming in from Africa with fake qualifications and getting jobs in the medical industry in the United Kingdom. There was one recently, I don't want to go on a tangent, but I'll just mention this. There was one recently where a woman was a nurse in a hospital, I think it was. She didn't turn up for all her hours that she was rolled into, it was called in for, on her rota, sorry, yeah, on her rota. So she had a family member go in on her behalf to do the hours that she was unavailable for.
Hey, Thunderous, I think your connection is a little unstable. We just lost all of us, but your audio is a little weak. So just go again. So this person didn't show up for their shifts, and?
Yes. So a family member was actually doing part of the shifts as well. So she was at home while the family member was doing the other half of the shift, as it were. So already we're seeing a very negative impact on the health system in the United Kingdom via immigrants coming in and fulfilling roles in the medical profession. Now, the 4 doctors that are involved in this child, not one of them was indigenous. 3 of them have Islamic names. I didn't research the 4th one because actually this is my error. I was going to say, could we leave this one as a Christmas special, this situation? So in effect, Lucy Connolly already has an emotional attachment about the negative impact of immigration because she is, in effect, being a victim of it herself.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's interesting to note that she has lost a child, and which wasn't taken into consideration. She lost a child because the doctor was negligent for her child. Whether he is a direct immigrant, he was certainly progeny of an immigrant to the country. 3 other doctors were involved in this situation. So Lucy would not be in the right frame of mind when commenting, but still had the presence of mind of removing the tweet anyway. Yet what we are seeing now, like for this doctor, he didn't get struck off. He still managed to keep his job. So in effect, your medical profession negligence can cause a child to lose their life, a mother to lose their child, and a father to lose their child. Yet, when a woman in her grief makes an irrational comment some years later, she will get 2 years in prison, but your negligence will not impact you in any way.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, unfortunately, this is behind a paywall. So let's go to the next one. I mean, just shocking. Nurse charged with sexual assault of woman in vegetative state who gave birth.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's a foreigner. I'll leave you guys to guess.
I know that's happened in England a couple of times as well. It's also happened in care homes in the United Kingdom.
It's happening in Italy and France. I've seen it where these people take jobs as carers to go to homes of pensioners and others and those who are ill, and then they end up raping them. And you're seeing more and more of these reports. Here we've got rising sexual violence against older patients in NHS hospitals. So groundbreaking research uncovers increasing rates of sexual violence against older people in NHS hospitals in England. And this team has teamed up with independent researcher Amanda Warburton Wynne to publish a new research. There were 274 allegations of staff sexually assaulting older patients in just 3 years. So this is from Hourglass, and of course we have to wonder, if that's all that there are, if there weren't more.
Well, if it wouldn't be just sexual assaults, one has to bear in mind that certain cultures can be a little bit impatient with and inexperienced with dealing with people that are old age pensioners, because many people will have some form of dementia as well. And if you recall, Lloyd, we covered a situation where the police themselves assaulted a man in a wheelchair that was clearly suffering dementia, that only had one leg, and he was tasered. And all he had in his hand was a butter knife.
Yes.
So the police themselves are complicit with using violent assault on OA pensioners that are actually disabled and suffering dementia.
Yep. And now this one, alarming scale of sexual violence and abuse on mental health wards. Now, this is England and Wales. And of course, a lot of these people are, with the previous report, a third of the patients were not referred to any kind of onward care. So they obviously just try to bury the whole story. So they're not keeping adequate records. And of course, we don't know who's been doing these odd crimes. Now, of course, if there was John Smith, from down the lane, you'd have heard about it and seen his picture. But it's always an unidentified male, a nondescript male with no skin color, no height, no hair, obviously nothing of any kind of identification. Always interesting.
And I think that's also a deliberate tactic, because that antagonizes people. When you don't give the description, that antagonizes people. And I think that's a tactic yet again used to further annoy, antagonize the public in this regard. If the way I see it, it's just another skill set in order to ratchet up the inclination or the driving force of, when you say there's going to be a civil war, I don't doubt that. I think something is coming. And I think these little things are contributing into the escalation of that mindset.
Yeah. So nearly 4,000 sexual safety incidents reported between January and August 2023 alone. That's in an 8-month period, 4,000 incidents, right? And of course, this was not the first piece of work on the issue. In 2018, the Care Quality Commission stated that patients felt that staff did not keep them safe. They were unsupported in addressing sexual safety issues, and they were desensitized to sexual violence and abuse, and there was no multi-agency. They didn't care, in other words.
Yeah.
And the NHS has recorded more than 35,000 cases of rape, sexual assault, harassment, stalking, and abusive remarks in just 5 years across 2017 to 2022. But of course, we know that since 2022, this has miraculously stopped, correct, Thunderous?
Well, I'd like to see what the figures are going to be in the next maybe if they do the consensus in 2027, what the figures then, and see if that correlates with a certain influx of people from a certain demographic.
Yeah, and there have been 56 gang rapes on NHS premises across 10 police forces in England. Surprised we haven't heard about this in the news. I'm surprised they haven't talked about this as one of the benefits of multiculturalism. I'm so surprised.
Just think of what you're saying there. 56 gang rapes. Now, what does that constitute? That's obviously constituting 2, 3, or 4 males raping a person. The presence of mind of 2, 3, or 4 men to actually take a woman on a public piece of property to commit such an act. It's the word obscene is beyond the word obscene. But I could never imagine 10, 15, 20 years ago, I'd be living in a country where such a thing would be taking place. And I'm sure there are going to be people in the comments that probably be, say, 45 years and older that live in the United Kingdom that would agree that maybe 10, 15 years ago, they couldn't imagine that we would be sitting here on, say, the 9th of November, 2025, reading and discussing articles like this that are taking place in our country. In particular, what you would call, for want of a better phrase, sacred ground, like a hospital.
Yeah, I just want to remind people this was Christians just a short while ago. You guys might want to try remembering that. This was what Christians looked like not that long ago. So, oops, let me just bring up the image. Yeah, so we may want to remember this, and we may want to, this was Christians. So think about that for a minute, and maybe you want to get over being, offensive, because there may be a time that you're going to have to be slightly more than just merely offensive. What do you think, Thunderous?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, that may lead on to the next discussion if you wanted to discuss it. And that's another common thing that people are asking now amongst themselves. And this is not mainstream media. This is people from the real media, if you like, where they're discussing, would you get involved in trying to stop an attack if you saw an attack take place? For instance, we had the situation in America where the Lithuanian lady got stabbed in the neck, and we've had many stabbings. So there was the one, Ukrainian lady got stabbed in the neck, and we've had in the past, say 20 days in the United Kingdom, 2 stabbing events, certainly that hit the media, probably more than that. But the 2 where 3 men were attacked, 1 was killed, and another one where 10 people were attacked. One, probably, I think 1 or maybe 2 actually quite seriously. But the question that came out of it from certain areas was, what would you do if you were there present watching this take place? Would you get involved, or would you run away? What do you think in this day and age now, Lloyd?
I mean,
you're a trained man in this area. The only thing I can say is that I come from a martial arts background, but I am old now. So I'm not as young and as skilled as I used to be. How would you answer that?
Okay, hold on. I'm going to try and find an article. This is a former boxer, okay? I'm not sure, but there are cases in the UK where this is 72-year-old Frank Cotree, right? A former champion boxer, and he beat up a 24-year-old burglar, right? Now, and he threatened him and his wife with a knife. Right, this guy broke into his house. Now I know for a fact there are cases where people, the elderly, have defended themselves from burglars, and they have been charged. Like in one case, a guy ran out of a house, hurt himself, and he was given damages, whereas the elderly pensioner, owner of the property, was given a fine. And so this is what happens. In the UK. So people have been taught to fear taking action. And of course, this has worked very, very well. But I think there will come a point where people are going to realize you have to become, in this case, ungovernable. You can no longer follow those immoral laws. In my case, look, Poland is safe. I mean, it's a tough one that you ask, Thunderous. I mean, I was paid at one point to deal with issues like that, but I wasn't a soldier. My job was to pre-plan, to predict, prevent and escape situations before they became an issue, or to shut them down really fast before they could escalate. In my private life, yeah, I mean, in Poland, I think there would be some respect for self-defense. Although obviously it also depends on the judge or the prosecutor that you're dealing with. These people are often liberals, and but the UK, I think people would be afraid of being prosecuted. They would be afraid of stepping in, and I think that the law seems to favor the criminal. It seems to favor the perpetrators. So I think this is a roll of the dice. Look at what happened to Daniel Penny in the UK, in the US, in New York, on the subway, when a guy who was threatening people, was violent, threatened people, he took action, and he was the one that was arrested.
Yeah, there was another one in America. I don't know if you recall this one, where one guy was very abusive to two ladies on the train. Some men stepped in to intervene, but he pulled out a knife, stabbed two of them in the throat, and one of them somewhere else on his body. Two of them were dead. So it's a very difficult one, because if you run the risk of being harmed or seriously harmed or worse if you get involved, but if you did come off the better, you then run the risk of the full force of the law that would use the force of the law against you for getting involved in the first place. So you are caught between a rock and a hard place of what to do in a situation like that. And the only thing I could add on to that is that I'm 57 years old. So I lived through the 80s and the 90s in the United Kingdom, when we had, say, soccer hooligans, and we had men of capable means physically that were on the doors of pubs and clubs. What I've noticed in the past, say, 20, 30 years is the tough guys haven't been replaced. The hard men haven't been replaced. Those men that would have been hard men that would have replaced us have actually just become thugs themselves.
You know what? That's an interesting point. I worked clubs. I worked the door. I did that for about 10 years. There were some very intelligent bouncers, very good with verbal skills. Very capable guys, very smart guys, very skilled guys, but very good with their mouth. And now, as you say, thugs. Yeah, I've seen that.
And the thing is, because of those thugs and their thug nation, I think it's a generational thing, where it could well be because of the breakup of the family unit, and also the lack of discipline in schools, that lack of discipline at the home because the discipline has been removed, and the lack of discipline from the police, where children could commit crimes and they do it with impunity, whether that's created this kind of mindset. But also with the police themselves haven't matched.
Thunderous, you're back.
The police themselves haven't matched the increasing, if you like, violent ability of the modern day criminal in comparison to the criminal of, say, 20, 30 years ago. For example, I have been arrested on 3 or 4 occasions for violence. But when I got arrested, it's a fair cop, Gov. You've got me. And you had a mutual respect. Now, because one of the things that the United Kingdom did, and I'm sure I mentioned this on the show several months ago, is that you had people coming out of the military, squaddies as it were, and then going into the police force. So you had fit men, trained men, disciplined men, strong men, and also
people who've been to university, got a degree, and they got pink hair and
exactly that. So the policemen of, say, 20, 30 years ago were capable men that matched the physical ability of the doorman, if that was the case, or the hard men of that particular period of time.
Yeah.
Now you're finding that the thugs that we have today have no conscience in what they do. They'll pull out a knife, they'll pull out a weapon, and they don't care who they're going to use it on. But you've got a police force that don't match the ability of the criminal, as it were. You know, in this country now, when the fire service or the ambulance service turn up to a situation, you're finding these kind of thugs are throwing weapons at the fire service and the ambulance service and the police. You're finding in this country now, you have to have security at the hospital. This is unheard of. So it kind of matches, if you like, the escalation in crime with the type of youth and age that are committing the crime, and the ability of discerning, intelligent, hard men as well, not replacing that generation of men that would have kept those younger men, give them a slap and then, but they're not around anymore. I don't know if that I hope I come across as making sense there.
Yeah, your audio is breaking up a little bit. Next time before you go live, reboot your computer, your laptop, your tablet, and your Wi-Fi. Just reboot all of those, because I do that regularly. It really makes a difference because your audio is a little weird. So next topic, because we have a lot of tabs to go through, and I want to tell us about this. What is this I am a Muslim poster? Because
I only came across that today, Lloyd. That is a pamphlet or a draft that's been drawn up to be introduced in schools to introduce children at an early age as it says that I'm a Muslim, basically teaching what Islam is and what it is to be a Muslim.
You know what?
I've only come across that today, so I'm not.
Do they do this for Christianity in schools?
Well, they're supposed to, but I think this is a clever little tactic yet again that's going to annoy people. I think this is an object of annoyance, and quite deliberately so, because this isn't part of an education system, an education process to educate people. I see this as a device to antagonize people.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, let me bring up something that actually is going to be very important, and I think we should do it now. Let me do this here. So, guys, when you have people posting about anything, just remember to also just on social media, post this image about the 5 pillars of Islam. Don't let them get away with pretending that they're wonderful and shiny and peaceful, okay? Please don't. So, free speech, judge rules criticism of Islam counts as a protected belief under equalities law. So there seems to be some little bit of pushback. Oh my God, the BBC boss Tim Davie has resigned. Yes. Of course, nothing will change. No one will ever go to jail. But finally, so basically, now some guy was sent to, he was charged. He was in court. And the judge said, no, criticizing Islam is fine because you can criticize Christianity. Why can't you criticize Islam? So this means this is protected belief under the equalities law. And he says also that clearly we are now approaching a blasphemy law. So Islam critical views are protected under the Equality Act. This is a really good thing.
This is news to me. So has this come about the guy that burnt the Quran outside one of the embassies?
I think so. This is yesterday's news. This is literally yesterday.
So it must be the same guy then that tried to burn the Quran, and he himself was that, because that was the irony, wasn't it? That the guy with the knife didn't get arrested, but the guy burning the Quran.
No, it's not that guy. It's not that guy. It's a different dude. So 42 of his social media posts were either offensive or inflammatory or both, with 29 said to be designed to demean or insult Muslims. Hell yes. So he referred to the Prophet Muhammad as a monster. This man he gets my vote. He described Islam as morally bankrupt, dangerous cult, and a 1,300-year-old con trick. I like this guy already.
But what's he said that's wrong? If you look at the Islamic text in the context of history, what has he said that was wrong? If people want to say, well, if the accusation is that Muhammad is a monster, where is the offense in that when you look at the biography of Muhammad? When he makes the comment that is morally bankrupt, when you can have trade sex slaves, have sex wives, have 4 more wives, beat your wife, and also taqiyya, which is the practice of lying to defend your faith, and also hate speech, which is that non-Muslims are the worst of creatures. How is it not morally bankrupt?
No, he's not wrong. Hello, everyone. Hello, unidentified individuals and others. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. So I think this is very positive news. So guys, at least take the good news. And if you're in the UK, the precedent has now been set. So if I were you, go online, please label Prophet Muhammad as a monster, describe Islam as morally bankrupt, call it a dangerous cult, and a 1,400-year-old con trick. if you don't mind, I would very much appreciate that, because according to the law, you now can. That is great stuff.
On that, I would just like to comment something that we were discussing before the show went live, Lloyd, and that's with reference to people's commentary on Islam. When you're watching, or for the people that live in the United Kingdom, they may watch certain, say, channels on YouTube that discuss the state of the world at the moment. Interview panels with people like Rafe Hadel Manku and so on. And a lot of the criticisms have one thing in common. They're all talking about one subject with reference to Islam. They are not talking about the Islamic dilemma. They are not talking about Muhammad's relationship with 6-year-old Aisha. They are not talking about, say, the archaeology and the existence of Mecca pre-7th century. They're not talking about the direction of the Qibla. They're not even talking about whether Muhammad even existed or not. Now, if you look at, say, polemics of, say, the past 10, 15 years on YouTube with certain YouTube channels, we all know who they are, okay, the big popular ones, where, and I say this kindly because we've all learned something from them, where they basically regurgitate and discuss the same things periodically. Now, one of them is the Islamic dilemma as an example. Now, that's not new. That's an old argument. It's just been reinvented, repackaged, and presented in a different way. But it's nothing new there. But the thing is, what all these other channels are discussing, which is where you have been ahead of the curve, Lloyd, they're all discussing one thing: Sharia. No one talks about anything else other than the introduction of Sharia. When you're looking at Mandani, a mayor in New York, they weren't talking about the Islamic dilemma. They weren't talking about the implications that if you're a Muslim and you go by the Quran 33:21, where you have to say that Muhammad is the most glorious example or the most moral example to follow, and then maybe bring up Muhammad's relationship when he sexually intercoursed 9-year-old Aisha. No one's talking about that. They're talking about one word about him: the implementation of Sharia. When you're talking about Khan, they're talking about how many Sharia courts are taking place in London. Then, by extension, how many are taking place in the country. When you're talking about places like Birmingham, such where Islam is becoming more and more political in certain towns and cities, they're not talking about these, say, the Islamic dilemma. They're talking about the Sharia.
So, guys,
and
go on, please.
So this is where I have been watching for, say, the past 8 or 10 months, where I've been waiting as Islam has been sort of like increasing in its influence, not just in England, but by extension Europe and further extension the United States. Whether anybody, any leading politician or mainstream media or any local media that we all tend to lean towards when we want to get an update, whether they will talk about, what are they going to talk about with reference to the Islamic influence? They're not talking about what Jay Smith says. They're not talking about what David Wood says. They're not talking about what, say, Sam Shamoon's talking about, or Al-Fadi. They're not talking about what Bob the Builder has to say. They're all talking about what you've covered on your show
Sharia.
for years ago.
Thank you. No, I've got a show coming up with, I've got Karin coming back on in a couple of weeks. As soon as we can schedule time with her and Usama, we'll be talking more about that, because this is now, thank you for that. I think people are seeing that they want to implement the Sharia because that is the legal and social framework that they now want to implement now that they have political power. They don't want to just read the Quran. No, they want to implement it. And that mechanism is the Sharia. So, yeah, thanks for that. So, guys, I just want to bring the attention to this. London, of course, as you know, there are grooming gangs literally all over the UK except London. Not in London, not one. Not a single one has ever been connected to London in any shape, way, or form for some odd reason. Until recently, people started to discover that maybe this weird black hole is fiction. Human error may have led to grooming gang cases being dropped. That's fascinating. Human error could have led to criminal cases involving grooming gangs being dropped. The early stages of a massive review have found. So the National Crime Agency has found literally thousands of cases, thousands
And
of such cases. Yeah.
and the human that made the error, was his first name Mohammed?
I am pretty sure it's going to be Muhammad or Akbar or Abdul or something. And let's see, new Sadiq, these are all 5 days old. New Sadiq Khan bombshell as he's slammed by survivor of Levy Belfield grooming gangs, because apparently this is going to come out. This is starting to come out. My London grooming gang allegations story, a statement from London Borough of Hounslow Council. So the whole fiction is now starting to unravel. And look, if I were you, remember, Brits, you guys once owned the world. Remember your grandparents. Remember your great grandparents. Remember your heritage. Remember, you were once warriors. Remember that. I'm not going to add to that. I'm sure you'll get the picture. So Daily Mail tells us record number of children in England are abused because parents think they are witches or possessed by black magic. Don't tell me these are Buddhists again.
Actually, in this instance, this originates about 10, 15, not 15, 15, 20 years ago in London, where there was a famous case called the Torso in the Thames, which is where they found the decapitated body of a child that they recognized was part of a black magic process, or where they thought the child was possessed. This would be people coming in from Africa who come under the guise of being Christian. What do you mean?
Are you saying that our greatest strength, our GDP, our doctors, lawyers, and engineers, are you saying they believe in black magic and they're abusing their children, beating them, hurting them, torturing them?
No, that's only something white people do. Come on, it's what white people. It's not what people of other continents do. That's like saying that Muslims commit FGM. I mean, how dare you say that Muslims do honor killings? Really, they don't do things like that. What about acid attacks or hot water attacks or oil attacks? The Muslims don't do that. Come on, Lloyd, you're being a bit prejudiced. You're being racist. You're being Islamophobic.
I do apologize. So yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry, I should not have done that. Yeah, because we need to. Moving on. Okay, right. Yeah. So guys. So if you nice white people would please stop abusing your children because of witchcraft, demon possession, and black magic. Janice, are you guilty of this? Just let us know, please. It's okay. We're going to set up a black magic and witchcraft helpline that you can call and you can tell people, hi, I'm a well-balanced, middle-aged Christian British woman. And yeah, I got black magic problems, man. I got witchcraft. I got demonology. I got things going on, and it's. Can
I just add on to that?
Yeah.
Can I just add on to that? It's worth mentioning that Islam is linked with these kind of things as well, because they do believe people can be possessed by jinn. If a woman is, not only can children be possessed by jinn, but I've heard Muslim sheikhs and their imams say that when a woman goes out wearing certain type of clothing, she could be attractive to the jinn and therefore become a possession of the jinn and therefore will be troubled by the jinn.
Yeah.
So as far as Islam is concerned, Islam also has the same problem, though because of the Islamic community, as we know, anything that takes place within the Islamic community, they just close ranks tighter than the sphincter of an anus.
No, I mean, this superstitious stuff, you'll see this kind of superstition, you'll see it in North Africans, Moroccans, Tunisians, and so on. You'll find it even in Egyptians. You'll find it in Arabs, certainly, but you'll see it in black people from Africa, the tribal blacks from Africa. You'll see it, as I said, North African Muslims. So guys, look, these are things that maybe you want to start sharing on social media, because these people are running a very strong, very powerful social media campaign to push their views. But I see it failing. I do see that people, normies like us, like you, are pushing back. So please use these things, look up these things, paste them, quote them, use them, because unfortunately they're trying to smear you. You unfortunately have to do something about it. You need to smear them right back, it's fair because it's what they started. You finish it. It's as simple as that. Liza Lane Petter says, and thank you. I've learned so much from Lloyd in terms of Sharia. His sharing of knowledge is second to none. The Drive documents are extremely helpful. I'm active on X and frequently refer to documents from Lloyd. Thank you. By the way, just an hour ago, I updated my Google Archive. I haven't done so in a while. When I upgraded to Windows 11, it just caused nothing but havoc. And anyway, I've managed to fix most things. I now have, I can synchronize my Google Archive again. I've just added about 3 or 4 gigabytes, maybe 7 gigabytes of additional documents. So I have far more documents now in the Google Archives. I have a few new folders. So there's more information on my Google Archive. Links always in the description. So yeah, Spanish priest. Okay, yeah, I don't know about this one. Let's skip on this one. They found him guilty of, okay, a Spanish priest was found guilty of making comments that were Islamophobic.
Best he was telling the truth then.
I guess he was. So guys, Spain is being reconquisted by Muslims again this time. So let's hope that they find their backbone. I mean, these guys, you know.
That might be the start of drive them out from where they're driven you out. So after they're done Gaza, they're going for Spain.
Great. Catherine says she's going to stop using Christian witchcraft on her children. Thank you, Catherine. We do appreciate that. Don't you think that's great? We've now contributed to an improvement in the life of at least one child. What do you think, Thunderous?
One more than what Muslims do with their children.
Yeah. Islamo trauma, yeah. So too many Muslims working in these professions, yeah. And I mean, can you now trust your local council in the UK if it's overrun by Muslims? Because they are clannish. They look after themselves first, their group first.
I think it's also worth mentioning as well, with reference to the medical profession, that when the Gaza situation happened, you'll notice that there were many doctors actually brought up and questioned, reprimanded, and some even struck off from Australia all the way to America, that were airing their views about their attitude towards people that was in support of, say, Israel, or even Israelis themselves. So even though we may be a year or two on from, say, what the situation that took place on October the 7th, the mindset of the Muslim hasn't changed. And an example of that would be the game that in the Champions League, where Maccabi Haifa were due to come over to England to play Aston Villa in the Champions League football game. Yeah. And because of the Muslim influence in Birmingham, that stopped those fans from coming over. So these people, they will bear grudges.
Yeah, no, so guys, you're seeing this is the result of the long march through the institutions. This wasn't just something done by the Fabians. This was done by the Muslims as well. And unfortunately, it's entrenched. You are beyond, at this point, I think, just casually voting them out. I don't think it's going to go down that easily. And unfortunately, you are left with very little choice, but there's going to have to be some degree of coercion or force at this point. So this was one example of people that these guys were eventually fired because they made threats against Jews. This is a serious problem. So where are we? What is this? Welsh Reform Council that teams up with Tommy Robinson allies in parents meeting? What is that?
I forgot what that one is, Lloyd.
Okay, so let's skip it. Muslims, mom's furious. Muslim son sick served ham and bacon at school. But apparently, you have to be okay because in the UK prisons now, halal meat is the standard at all the prisons, I believe, at schools. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, so you're finding now that supermarkets in the United Kingdom and other various food venues, for instance, your local takeaways now, that are not traditionally Islamic or or set up by Muslims, but say your Kentucky or your Burger King and such. I'm not sure about Burger King. I'm just mentioning it as an example, but a majority of the commercial worldwide fast food outlets don't advertise that they're selling halal meat. They'll have some note or motif in the window that they are, but they don't overtly advertise that they're actually serving halal meat to anybody that goes into their establishment for food. So though these people can have, say, a worldview that is not compatible with, say, Islam, They will, however, for the sake of profit, compromise their customer base and serve, by extension, to the Muslim population, which for me is a terrible sellout.
Yeah.
Because you're promoting the ideology and giving the idea, and also what people need to realize is you're giving the ideology strength by doing it. So it's not just a case of Islam is gaining traction. From the mindset of a Muslim, when he sees this kind of traction being gained, what do you think their thought process will be, Lloyd? What do you think the Muslims see?
That you allow, the problem is that under the Sharia, the moment you allow certain Islamic actions to become normalized in the culture, then they automatically assume they've been successful and that your country is now a Muslim country. So under the rules, the fact that they have Islamic courts, so they can do Islamic marriage, or they can do certain things that are customary Islamic law, the UK, France, Germany, all of these places, even the US, is a Muslim country. You need to understand, from their perspective, it is a Muslim country now. And you
can, and people can see that by what they saw this week with protests over a football game. Now, if they can do that with McAfee Fiver, what, by extension, what other teams will they do that to? What about when Tottenham goes to Birmingham, which is famously Jewishly owned, a football club owned by Jews? What are they going to do when Tottenham go face Villa? Will the Muslims be protesting then as well because they're in sport? Maybe they'll make the allegation of being in support of Zionism. How will the football club themselves react that their club is being involved and could be also face some kind of financial impact as a result of protests by these ideologies? But also, by extension, with the Muslim mindset, is that when they see Islam gaining traction in some way, where they've seen Muslims becoming politicians or mayors and such, and MPs, from their point of view, they see that as Allah blessing them.
Right.
So they will see that Allah is empowering Islam, and indeed Islam is actually taken over because it is the will of Allah doing so.
Right. Yeah, we're not getting through as many of these as I thought. What is this about, Thunderous? This Gov UK, extreme right-wing terrorism.
That was it.
We know of the 50,000 or so terrorists on the MI5, MI6 watch list, whatever it is, 47,000 of them, like 95% of them, are literally Muslims. So I don't know why they want to worry about right-wing terrorism. It's what the heck is that?
That article discussed right-wing terrorism, but I didn't see anything Islamic on there. The point being in that was, it's a very, if you like, loose term. If you go up again to is the one about the right wing, it's a very vacuous, nebulous statement, because what is extreme right-wing terrorism? Has anybody ever seen extreme right-wing terrorism? Has there been any kind of driving cars?
Was one. Let's see. The people protesting at the migrant hotels were all extreme right-wing terrorists. The angry people who rioted after the Southport killings were extreme right-wing. In fact, anybody who doesn't want migrants in their country is extreme right-wing.
You know what, Lloyd, now that you mention it, you're absolutely right. Those protesters in Epping that were in fear because one of the immigrants sexually molested a child, then got arrested, then got a year in prison, then was let off, and then not let off. He was allowed to leave the prison. There was a manhunt for him, and then he was given £500 to leave the country. I suppose if you have a negative view on those kind of like articles, you are. Sorry, Lloyd.
We're the government.
That's us, isn't it? That's us. We're extreme right-wing terrorists, then, surely.
No, the UK government's the enemy of the people. So what about this one?
This guy was on a rant. I think people need to listen to this for themselves. Maybe they can find the time.
We are ready for Mortal Kombat. Apparently.
Yeah, basically threatening that they won't that Muslims should readily unite and prepare for violence in defense of Muhammad, and when they say blasphemous things about him. And this is the problem with Islamophobia, because when you look at the rules of Islamophobia, this isn't about attacking the ideology with ad hominem. This isn't attacking the ideology with myths or lies or propaganda or rhetoric. The Islamophobia is based on telling the truth about Islam. That's the irony. You know, if you attack Christianity, there's no way of attacking Christianity, bringing out a truth and making that truth offensive. There's nothing true about Christianity that a Christian would find offensive. Yet Islam is inverse. Bringing out a truth on Islam is offensive, because the truth of the matter is Islam is offensive. A 54-year-old man having sex with a 9-year-old girl is offensive. It's offensive to anybody but a Muslim. But from a Muslim's point of view, if you bring up this fact, which is recorded in our own literature, this is Islamophobia. And it needs to be met with violence, according to that guy.
Yeah, you know, when I heard this particular article, the Vatican has set up a Muslim prayer room at the heart of the library. I still have no idea what to think of this. Honestly, I would have hoped they would have just said no. That's what I would have said. But the problem is that when you look at certain things that governments have to do, or large institutions, they have to be diplomatic. You know, even President Trump has to talk to people that he dislikes, because it's his job to do diplomacy, and that's simply how diplomacy works. You've got to be nice to people that you hate. You've got to show certain decorum. There's certain protocols you have to follow. I mean, I would have hoped they would have said no, but unfortunately, they are effectively a diplomatic institution as well, and this is what they have to do.
I have a different view, but I won't air that view online.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, it's unfortunate. I'm not happy with this. I don't think anyone's happy with this. You know, I don't think anyone's happy with this. I mean, they should have said, tell you what, you let us build a cathedral in Saudi Arabia and you can have your prayer room here. How's that? You know?
That would have been the start of a mutual dialogue, yes. But
Yeah.
by giving a prayer room, the kindest thing I can say on that is that by giving a prayer room, you're acknowledging Muhammad as a prophet. Because Jesus, the question you have to ask yourself is, in that situation, what would the Apostle Paul or Jesus himself do? We both know the answer.
What the heck? Is this real? Pope Leo left in shock after man urinates on the altar of St. Peter's Basilica. Holy moly. Who did that? The man who has not yet been identified. Isn't that always...
Oh, here we go.
Isn't that always the case? The man has not yet been identified. He was a Welsh choir boy, no doubt.
There you go. What news is that? When did that come out? I didn't see that.
Oh, here we go. Okay, who knows? This is going to be fascinating. This guy urinates on the... Oh, holy moly. Wow. Wow. Zahi Hawass. Is this is the this is the guy, the egomaniac that is the main apologist, right? For
that was just a comedy I sent to you, because I just found it absolutely hilarious that this guy could lie so blatantly on the Joe Rogan show, and he's supposed to be the chief archaeologist or Egyptologist in Egypt.
Wow.
Yet nobody outside of Egypt has any respect for him, and no archaeologist.
Scream and shout. So what was he saying here in this interview?
You have to listen to it, or people have to listen to it to see it for themselves. But yeah, absolutely hilarious.
Wow. Okay, fine. So I will drop this link in the chat. I will drop this in the chat now. Zahi Hawass. I'll drop it in the chat.
I think the reason I put it in there, not just only because it's humorous, but I think it's an excellent example of how in the scientific world, information that should be given to the public is actually gatekept, with gatekeepers like him not allowing information that could change the view of Egypt and change the view of Egyptology is not being given to other people, so that because there is so much at stake, the sciences in this area are full of hubris and pride, and they would rather call people who challenge the narrative as heretics, liars, and all the other ad hominem attacks, like on people like Graham Hancock, for instance, or they'll throw or David Roll, or they'll rather throw the information under the bus that they find, or maybe twist the information that they find or the evidence that they find to make it fit the narrative or the current narrative of Egyptology. And this is not something new. This happens in all the scientific fields.
Well, yeah, this guy's a heavy gatekeeper. That's for sure, though. That is definitely for sure. I've only got, I think, 3 more tabs left here.
Right. This is in India, where this has been long ongoing with reference to charging people who go to proselytize. Okay, so that, but it's aimed at Christians. But I don't think the problem is with Christianity. I think they've put it there, Christians, when in reality we all know what the real problem is in India, and that is things like jihadi brides, where girls are kidnapped and forced to convert under duress. I think that is the real problem in India. Right. But maybe because of tensions and relationships between Pakistan and India, or maybe some internal issues that are taking place, it would be easier to maybe pacify certain ideologies so that there's no reprisals. Because if you use the word Christian or Christianity, whichever version of Christianity is doing the proselytizing in India, there's not going to be a violence backlash. Whereas if you accuse Islam of this, there would likely be a violent backlash.
They were threatened with death unless they renounce their faith. And the police are under pressure from extremists to register false cases and arrest pastors and believers. Yeah, India, the problem is India has like, what, a quarter of its population are Muslims, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they already got Pakistan, but that's not good enough. They want everything. So, yeah, this is frightening. This is really scary. And this one we missed. This one, okay, so that was the last tab of all the links you sent me. Yeah, that was the last tab of all the links that we were sent. You there, Thunder? So you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, so that went through. So, is there any good news? I mean, do we have any good news, or do we do? I mean, we did see a couple of positives. Do you see any positives? Do you see any change happening? I mean, you're on the ground. What do you see in your part of the world?
If I'm being honest, and I've said this to you routinely over the years, I think things are going to get worse. I think as far as 2026 looms on us imminently, I think we're going into another year where things will escalate even more so. I think an example of this is the influence Islam has in certain cities via numbers, where they're now attacking, if you like, British institutions of the working class. And for me, the protests that the Muslims did in Birmingham over the Champions League game, it was a show of force. Now, this is beyond praying in the streets, where they'll take up streets and start praying when they could be praying at home or in the mosque. This is on another level. And you're finding that Muslims are using certain things like, wearing masks and using bus phrases, without faces, there are no cases. Or one of the latest, the Lamborghini lawyer, where he was saying that don't have a baseball bat in your car, have a baseball and a baseball glove in your car as well. That way you can say, I was going to a sporting event. Because if you go to a car and you've got the baseball bat in your car on its own, the police could say you've got an offensive weapon in your car. Whereas if you have the baseball glove and the baseball ball, you could say you're going to a sporting event, and therefore be let off with having that offensive weapon in your car.
Okay.
So tips, and also mosques are now using the building for internal self-defense and martial arts training as well. So I've noticed a few mosques. I would know this, obviously, because my family is involved in martial arts. So not only is this coming out on in certain YouTube channels, but also I see this happening in where I live with my brother, who has to compete with certain martial art clubs, and seeing what's going on from his point of view as well.
Yeah, and from the audience, I wonder, I can put the link up. You know what? I'm going to put the link up, and I'll give you guys a couple of minutes if you'd like. Here's the studio link. I'm going to drop it in the chat. If there's one or two of you who'd like to come up, maybe share a word, I'll give it a couple of minutes for you to use the link. And yeah, but I do see the situation is bad. Things look very bleak, but I also do see positives. I also see that even in the judiciary, there are good people. Like Tommy Robinson was let off recently. He was in court and he was cleared of all charges. So there are certain positives. There are things where the BBC now with Mr. Davey, the head of the BBC, is now out. So maybe nothing will happen, but I do see that there may be a shift. I want to be positive. Let's just say I would rather be positive. I'd rather, because to play into the negativity also then just it becomes a repeating cycle, and you simply spiral downwards. And I think it's important to find things that will inspire people, things that will give them hope. And I do think that the British people, the Americans, the French, all of you still have a lot of fighting spirit left, and you are capable of coming back from this, as bleak and as dire as it may be. Yes, it's new territory, but sometimes, you know, when violence is sometimes violence is the solution. I'm not saying it is always, but sometimes it is the only solution. The thing is that violence is an emotional process that occurs over time. It starts with intent. Someone has a goal they want to achieve, and then they've got to choose their victim. Then they've got to find how to get themselves close to the victim to commit the crime. They've got to position themselves. So it comes intent. Then they've got to select what it is they want to do. They've got to choose their victim. They've got to then get close and do that. All these first three phases are all non-violent. But once they enact whatever crime it is they want to commit, this portion here where they use coercion, violence, this is the actual act itself. The fourth stage is where the violence happens. The problem is that at this point, you have to use violence to deal with it. You have to use force to deal with this. If you can stop it in the first three phases, you can do it non-violently, although your intervention has to become more severe in the first three stages as you get close to stage 4. Stage 5, because it's a 5-stage process, is where it's a fait accompli. It's happened. You've been raped. You've been abducted. You've been hit, right? You're now down and out. So the question is, what happens after? And that is a question you don't want to deal with, because you have no idea. At that point, it's up in the air where it goes after that. So while you still have an opportunity, take action. So Mr. Baltitude has joined. I'll give him. So guys, we'll do a couple of minutes and give him an opportunity to speak up. And yeah, so let's pull him on. Mr. Baltitude, hello.
Hello there, Lloyd.
Hi.
Firstly,
Welcome.
just to shout out to Thunderous One. I'm here in England, like him. Love all you say and do, Thunderous One. You know, so thank you very much for sticking up for us and saying what you do. So much respect to you, mate. Thanks for everything. Just to say, I'm on the ground like Thunderous One here in England, and for those of our friends overseas, don't give up on us. Things will change. You know, I often say to friends and family members that it's always darkest before the dawn. And as you're indicating, Lloyd, there is a growing consciousness here that, you know, it's kind of just sort of now a thing that multiculturalism hasn't worked. It's failed. And you know, I think, you know, Thunderous, I don't know if Thunderous One will agree with me or not on this one. You know, I think it's probably very likely we'll get a reform government in the next election. Whether or not they'll sort of do exactly what we want, the Farage, the leaders, are kind of a bit out of step. But I know that's a long time for us to wait. But as kind of Lloyd has pointed to, the current sort of far left and Islamist coalition has kind of probably for a generation ruined their chance of ever to be re-elected as well. And in fact, the Islamists are already sort of jumping ship to the Green Party, and that's a very strange coalition of far left, transgender kind of things, and I don't think anyone can see that coalition lasting very long with the sort of somewhat conservative northern town Islamist group. So that was just my view. Just that everyone overseas, we're not finished. We're definitely not. England's not over, and it might take some time, but we'll sort things out here. Don't worry.
No, look, yeah, I agree. I mean, look, you guys used to be called the British Bulldogs. Would be nice if you remember that. I think, yeah. I have a lot of faith that it's not that you can't fight, it's not that you don't fight, it's that you are being prevented from doing so. You haven't even started to resist. And I think once the shackles come off, once you are able to mount a defense, I think that your enemies are going to be, they're going to find that they've got the they might reconsider their position very, very rapidly. Let's put it that way. I don't think they're as strong as they think, and I don't think you're as weak as they try and make you appear.
Well, it was one other thing that Thunderous One talked about this. I mean, it's not clear to me. Thunderous One, tell me what you think. If there is going to be a civil war, I mean, what are the sides going to be? It's not clear to me what the two sides would be, or three sides, or whatever. What do you think?
It's not a civil war.
The problem I have with that is that as you were speaking there, Mr. Multitude, I was just thinking, something I mentioned to Lloyd earlier on in the show about the tough guys of the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, as they were. They're all in their sort of like 40s and 50s and 60s now, and that generation of hard men that were not just hard, but they had a bit of a street code about them as well. That generation of men hasn't been replaced, and it hasn't been replaced with the numbers. All right. So, and I liken it to, for instance, the football hooligans of the 80s, 70s and the 80s and early 90s, for instance, like, Leeds will go fight Manchester, Manchester will go fight West Ham, West Ham will fight Tottenham, and Tottenham will fight Chelsea, as an example. But come an England game, they would all unite. It would be just one big army of fans. I don't see that unity in England anymore. Not only are those men got too old now, but I don't see where the unity or the infrastructure of that, for the new generation, where is it and how is it manifest now? I see that those men in their 30s now, they're not hard men or street men anymore. They're street thugs, for me personally. And so I can't see where the unity for a fight back is going to come from. The only thing I can see of benefit, if it was a civil war as such, is that the Islamic community, it would be Islam versus whatever. That's what it would be, in my estimation, because that's where it seems to be leading to. Because there's nothing else within England that's having a detrimental impact on the country as the Islamic ideology. So, but the things with Islam, they live in enclaves, they live in silos, so they're easy to get at, so to speak. That would be the only advantage if it was going to be a civil war. Who's going to fight that war? That's the thing.
Okay, thank you both guys, Lloyd, and thanks for all you do as well. I watch quite a lot of your stuff, and it's always fascinating, not just this. So, guys, thanks very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming on. So, guys, look, I think we can be positive. I'm going to hide your video because I'm sure he wants to keep his identity secret.
Thank you.
No worries. So, guys, look, be positive. Stay positive. There are people like you who think like you, who are unhappy like you, and that sentiment is rising. At some point, it can no longer be suppressed. At some point, things will change. Now, sure, it will get worse before it gets worse, but give it some time. And maybe what happens is going to be necessary. Maybe that's going to be a reckoning that will be necessary. And It might change the status quo very suddenly, but perhaps not exactly pleasantly, but it's how it is. And I think the sooner you accept that, but your culture is worth fighting for. You are fighting for your culture, your traditions, and you're fighting against people who want to take them away from you. And make your decision which side you're on, what you're fighting for, your family, your values, your religious values, your history. You know, think about your legacy. And do you really want a bunch of third world camel jockeys and a bunch of atheist communists to impose the Soviet Union or Afghanistan on you? I would hope not. Thunderous, last word to you.
No, thank you for having me on, Lloyd. I think we've got one more show to do towards the end of the year. Maybe we can do sort of like an end of the year special towards the end of the year and discuss how this year has been. And if that is the case, it would be lovely to have everybody join us as usual. Thank you, Lloyd. And Mr. Multitude, maybe on the final show of the year, maybe you'd like to join us, and it'd be good to have another opinion on the discussion.
Yeah, Mr. B is still there. He should be able to still hear us. But yeah, Mr. B, you'd be welcome to come on, and maybe I can get a couple of Brits on as well. I know we have a few in the channel who might want to be able to do that. So fine, let's do a show. I'll put out the link, and a bunch of the Brits who are regulars are welcome to. We can have a little panel discussion. So let's do that. So guys, yeah. So let's do that. So yeah, guys, thank you very much for all the time. And Thunderous again. Yeah, guys, things are bad. This news is not being made public. Of course, your government has betrayed you, and you know, think and plan accordingly, and yeah, gather with people that think alike. And I think you are the majority. You understand you are the majority, whereas the others have picked their sides. So the battle lines are drawn. Don't be afraid. They made the rules. You just play the game, and if they start it, you finish it. It's that simple. And believe that you can win, because I believe you can. Thunderous.
Yes, dude. Thank you very much, everybody. Looking forward to speaking to you all again soon. Thank you, Lloyd, as usual. Always a pleasure to be on, to be invited, and to share some time with you. And always good to meet new people as well, like Mr. Multitude. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Take care, guys. So everyone, God bless. See you all soon. Bye.